Today on Feminine Roadmap, I am going to be introducing you to my new friend, Valerie Ramsey. We are going to be talking about creating what's next. You are not going to want to miss this. Stay tuned. Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. It's Gina coming to you on another gorgeous Monday morning. Today, I have a very special treat for you. My new friend, Valerie Ramsey, is with us today. She is a mother of 6. She was a stay-at-home wife and mother through her 20s and 30s. And then at 53, she decided to join the corporate world and start working at Pebble Beach. She stayed there for 15 years. And while she was there in her 60s, she became a model at 63, an author at 68 and 75. She became a public speaker as well in her 60s in over 50 television shows. She became a magazine editor at 76. She has had such an amazing what's next life since she turned 50, and I cannot wait to have her share her stories and her wisdom and her life with you. And she is mentoring younger women to grow and develop themselves. She is the perfect guest for you and for I. So let me welcome Valerie Ramsey. How are you today, Valerie?
Hi, good morning, Gina. I am great and so happy to be on the air with you and all of your guests.
Yes, I am so excited. I have to tell the story of how I actually met you. I've been looking for guests for the podcast, and as my tribe knows, Women's Day magazine invited me to be featured in their March 2019 issue. And that happened in mid-February that it launched, and I've had so many different people reaching out and asking if I want to interview them. It's actually PR companies. Well, I was looking at one of the authors on Amazon, and yours was at the bottom over the people who bought this also looked at this. And as soon as I read your bio, I'm like, I have to ask this woman if she'll be on my podcast. And I literally at 11:15 at night sent an email to Valerie, whom I've never met in my life. I told her my story and excitedly invited her onto the podcast. And within 7 hours, she said yes. It's really one of those cool serendipitous meetings. And so I'm getting to know Valerie as I'm sharing her with you. And from what I know, she is such a kindred spirit and the mentor that we're looking for those of us who hit midlife and are wanting to resist and be countercultural and not believe that our lives are coming to an end. But in fact, some of our most exciting and productive days are ahead of us. So that's our little kindred spiritship that Valerie and I share. So what I'm going to do is just let you hear from Valerie. How did she start this journey after being a stay-at-home wife and mother to basically globetrotting and doing some amazing things? So I'm going to turn this over and ask you, Valerie, to share your story with us. How did you decide, and how did it even happen, that you went from home to corporate after 50? Because you and I both know that's one of the stories, right?
Yes.
Nobody hires a woman after 50, right?
Usually true, but not always.
That's what I love. So why don't you share your story with us?
Well, my husband and I raised 6 children on the East Coast, and my mother had always been a big career woman, so I grew up with the knowledge that women could be both working wives and moms. And so I had in my mind the whole time I was raising this big family was, okay, this is great. Having a big family was exactly what I wanted at the time. But beyond that, I wanted to have a career. So I thought, okay, stay-at-home mom first, and then it's going to be my time. And so when I was 53, we moved from the East Coast out to the beautiful Monterey Peninsula in California. All of the children were grown and out of the nest, except for one in college. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get a job. Monterey Peninsula, So for those who don't know exactly where that is, it's 100 miles south of San Francisco, and it's comprised of Carmel, Pebble Beach, and Monterey, also Pacific Grove. So it's this beautiful little peninsula that juts out into the Pacific Ocean.
It's
And
like our jewel of California. It really is.
it is. And then Big Sur is just down Highway 1, a short distance. It's just incredibly beautiful. And so I thought about it. I thought, okay, what am I going to do out here? I had no idea. I had some retail experience part-time when my kids were little. I worked in a pretty retail store. I knew a little bit about typing and shorthand because my mother wouldn't let me get married at the age of 20 until I knew how to be a secretary if worse came to worse. But I really didn't have any experience. But I thought, well, if I'm going to work anywhere, I would love to work at Pebble Beach. I mean, it's just, I'm a Libra, and it satisfied all my Libra instincts. Beautiful, the people were happy. It was just, the ideal place to be. And I thought about it, and a girlfriend said to me, well, you should go over there and see if you could be an administrative assistant. And I said, there's no way. I don't have the knowledge or the experience. A place like Pebble Beach would never hire me. And she said, no, think about it. Go over and talk to them. And I resisted, but then finally I decided, okay, I would. And I had to go back a couple of times because I think at first they were rather horrified that this 53-year-old woman was even asking for a job at this fabulous golf resort that was populated mostly by young employees. But they said, okay, well, we'll give you a job in the Pebble Beach Pro Shop with all the college kids for the summer. And, just take it from there and see what works out. So I took that job. And as I like to say to people who were in my position, as I was at the time, don't be afraid to start at the bottom. Just get your foot in the door in a place that you want to be and you can see yourself being down the road, and go for it. So I took that job. I became really, great friends with a lot of the cute young employees that were working there. We had so much fun together. I learned so much from them. I learned a lot from the Pebble Beach people that would come into the pro shop to buy things, and I would ask them about, well, tell me about catering conference services, or tell me about sales, or whatever it is. I just wanted to soak it all up and learn. And I also thought, okay, Valerie, you don't know a darn thing about computers. You better go learn. So I did at the local community college, took a course in that. And at the end of the summer, I heard about an opening coming up in the marketing department. And I thought, perfect. I really like the sounds of that. So I let them know I was interested. They invited me in for a couple of interviews. At the end of the second interview, they said, okay, you're hired. So I made that jump and became a marketing assistant, and I did that for a couple of years. But the girl who had the public relations job worked directly next to me, and she would often ask me to help her out with press trips or photo shoots or, all this stuff, which I just loved doing. And I thought, that's the job I want someday. So a couple of years later, I had become an executive assistant to the senior vice president of marketing. And one day, Molly, the PR girl, told me she was going to move into a different part of the company. That afternoon, I went straight to our boss and said, Steve, since Molly is moving on, I would love to have her PR job. And he was, kind of shocked at first that I would ask for it. And then he looked at me and he said, okay, you've got it. Because he knew that I had been helping her out and I had learned a lot just by osmosis. So after 4 years at Pebble Beach, now I was 58, I took on that position. Well, then that opened up an experience that I have shared with a lot of audiences. Pebble Beach had just taken on Cadillac as their new brand partner. And so Cadillac could come up to Pebble Beach and do photo shoots for print ads or commercials anywhere they wanted on the property without paying a site fee. So they came with a crew of about 100. They had the clients with them, the ad agency, the production crew, and then I was responsible from the Pebble Beach end for staging and orchestrating this entire thing, finding staging places for all of the people on their 50 golf carts that we had and all the different things, the caterers, the whole thing. It was a huge undertaking. And of course, I was really nervous. I mean, this is my first week on this new PR job. So I had said, okay, I will meet all of you out on the 7th hole at 5 o'clock in the morning. This was on a Monday. For those of you who don't know the Pebble Beach 7th hole, I'm sure you've seen pictures of it or you've seen it in telecasts of the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am or one of the U.S. Opens that they've had there. Is that small par 3 hole that juts out into the ocean, and the tee box is on the bluff up above it. So I'm on the cart path. I'm jogging out there. As I said, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. The cart path is wet and slippery from the nighttime fog. There are no lights out there, but I did have some residual moonlight, and I could see the white sand of Carmel Beach across the water just beyond. And I'm jogging along. I can see the silhouettes of this whole huge crew. And all of a sudden, I stumbled on the edge of that cart path, and I fell flat on my face. Huge pain went roaring up from my left leg. Thank goodness there was a groundskeeper very close by. He saw me go down. He came over with a cart, helped me into it. He took me out to the 7th hole, and gritting my teeth so as not to show pain, I connected with the crew. We got off on our shoot. Later on, when I had an opportunity, I went over to the Pebble Beach Wellness Center. They x-rayed and said, oh, you've got a broken foot and a sprained ankle. So they taped it all up, put me on crutches. I went back to the shoot. The second day, and of course I'm on crutches, we are out shooting. This time we are shooting at the Beach and Tennis Club, which is part of the lodge complex, and it has a beautiful pool that overlooks Carmel Bay. And we've got this cute young guy and girl, and they're all dressed in black tie. The music is blaring to that wonderful old song, Making Whoopee, that Cadillac did a whole series of commercials to. They're horsing around at the edge of the pool, and all of a sudden, she is balancing her way, and he gives her a little shove from behind. She goes flying into the water. Then he jumps in afterwards, and then they're hugging and kissing, and the music hits a crescendo. And, it was just, the client was thrilled. Pebble Beach was happy. It just looked wonderful on film. And just at that moment, my cell phone rang, and it was my doctor I'd seen the week before, my gynecologist. And he said, I'm so sorry, but I've got some pretty bad news for you. The test showed that you've got uterine cancer. And because my mother and her mother had both had it and died from it, he was not going to wait around. So he said, I want you to plan on surgery next week and come into my office tomorrow for some pre-op testing. So day 3, I'm on my crutches, and I had to leave my crew one more time, and I went into my doctor's office, and he put his stethoscope on my chest, and he said, he said, I'm hearing a very unusual arrhythmia. I can't touch you until I send you off to a cardiologist to see what's going on, which he did that afternoon. And it turned out that I had a very severe case of something called viral cardiomyopathy, which is where a virus, it could even be a cold virus, gets into your heart muscle, and it really weakens it. So instead of contracting at, say, 80%, which is nice and healthy, mine was contracting at 20%. And it was causing all of these serious arrhythmias, the kind that can send you into sudden cardiac arrest. So, I thought, gosh darn it, here I am down 3 for 3 on the first week of my fabulous new dream job. And my friends were saying, what are you going to do? You've got this awful heart thing, you've got uterine cancer. Are you going to just retire? I mean, 58 years old, that was pretty old to be taking on such a brand new heavy responsibility. And I said, no, I'm absolutely not going to retire. I'm going to get over this hurdle. I'm going to get done what I need to have done. I'm going to have the surgery. I'm going to get an implanted cardio defibrillator. I'm going to get through it. And I'm going to come back and make the second half of my life even better than the first half has been. And God bless Pebble Beach. They were behind me 100%. They said, look, we really want you in this PR job. So you just go and do what you need to do. We'll hold your job for you, and we'll just pick up where you left off. So I was out for 2 months, but everything got taken care of, and I went back. So I'm thinking, okay, this is my second chance here. I'm really going to make it work. A few years later, when I was 63, I was overseeing a photo shoot for a golf program on the 18th hole, and the producer said to me, he said, I really love your looks. I think you should be doing something in modeling. And I said, I think you're being a sleazy Hollywood producer just because you're doing this show here. Nobody's going to want to hire a 63-year-old model. And he said, no, I'm serious. I think you'd be surprised. So he took some pictures, sent them to the biggest agency in San Francisco. And much to my amazement, they called me and said, we'd love to sign you to a contract. So I went up to meet them, and I said, this sounds like fun, but I'm not giving up my PR job at Pebble Beach because that's my dream career. That's serious. This I'll do as time permits. And so I started the whole modeling thing. A couple of years later, the Monterey Herald newspaper came to me and they said, I think our readers would love to read about a 63-year-old grandmother who became a model. Could we interview you? Which they did. And they did a really nice job with it, with photos and everything. So the next thing I knew, it got picked up on the news wires and it started going all over the country. And I would hear from both men and women alike, I'm in my 50s or in my 60s or even in my 70s. And, I thought I was finished. I didn't think I could do anything new anymore. And now I read how you started working, at 53 and then you became a model and, anything is possible. So it went, from Boston to Miami to Chicago to LA, all of these places. And I started, as I said, getting these wonderful emails. My daughter, Heather Hummel, she just got married. She's Heather Hummel Gallagher now, was a writer in Charlottesville, Virginia. And I would call her and read her some of these wonderful emails. And she said, Mom, I think we've got the basis for a book here. And so she put together a list of agencies in New York that might be interested in representing us. She finished off a proposal and she sent it to 4 of them. And within a very short time, 2 or 3 weeks, we had a literary PR agency that was really wanting to represent us and see if they could sell the idea of our book. So they took it out. They started shopping it to the big mainstream publishing houses. And within, I think, 2 weeks, McGraw-Hill picked it up. And they said, we love this. It's so timely. We want to bring it out in our top 5 lead books for spring. And it came out Mother's Day, and the Today Show invited me to go and be on, and it was just really a big deal. We were so lucky. I know that was an unusual experience. I have since learned that something like 98% of the manuscripts that are submitted to agents get turned down. So to have ours accepted and then sold within such a short period of time was unheard of. So anyway, we were very, very fortunate. That happened, and my first book, Gracefully, Looking and Being Your Best at Any Age, that McGraw-Hill published, came out in 68. And I knew, because even the year before that, I'm going to sidetrack a little bit here. The year before that, the executive producer of the Today Show came to Pebble Beach with his wife and his 4 little boys and their nanny, and I took good care of them and liked him very, very much. Darling family. And it was right after that that the newspaper article came out in the Monterey Herald. So, and I say this, to people who are thinking about doing something, or they get an idea. If you get an opportunity, you just go for it. So when that article came out, I stuck it in a FedEx envelope. I put a note in there saying, in case my story happens to coincide with anything that you've got in your wheelhouse, this is something to consider. He got it the next day. He sent me an email back immediately, and he said, we would love to do a story about you. So stand by for a call from one of our producers. And so they came out to Pebble Beach and they interviewed me at the lodge about how I had gotten that job and what it was like to go from stay-at-home mom to that. And then they followed me down the coast. I had a photo shoot at Big Sur for Lexus, and they followed down there and they filmed, me doing that commercial. So that was great. That was wonderful. And then when the book came out, they said, oh, we'd love to have you come back on and talk about your book this time. So I did. I went on with Hoda and Kathy Lee, and they were darling and wonderful. And so that started a lot of different television appearances and a lot of invitations to do public speaking, which now has become my passion. One of the big places that I ended up speaking was for the American Heart Association. Every spring they have these Go Red for Women luncheons. They're big fundraisers. And because of the heart experience I had, and also because my daughter Heather, the author, she had been born without a pulmonary artery and a big hole between the 2 lower chambers back in 1965, before there was a cure for that. And so we went through that whole thing with her, and she is, in huge good health now after 3 open heart surgeries, but it was a big deal. So I had a lot to say to the American Heart Association. So anyway, I knew that at 68, my first book was out, and I was doing these other things and getting other opportunities. And I thought, okay, 15 years at Pebble Beach, it has been wonderful. But if I'm going to do other things, I better leave Pebble now, so I'm free to take on whatever comes my way. And so I did. And that was when I was 68. At 72, my husband and I moved down here to South Florida, where we live now. Wilhelmina Models heard that I was here. They invited me to come down to South Beach. They offered me a contract. It was my 72nd birthday. I said, do you have any idea what an amazing birthday present you've just given me? 72 years old, I've got a contract with one of the world famous modeling agencies. So we did that, and I've done some really fun, wonderful modeling jobs here and even in Jamaica one time, and so forth. And when I was 76, I happened to meet a couple who had just started publishing this Fabulously 50 magazine. That was the title of it. And they needed an executive editor. And the more we talked, even though I didn't have that experience, they felt and I felt that because of my background, it was something I could take on for them. And so they offered me that position, and I said, let's go for it. Why not? And I did that for a couple of years. And now I love to mentor young people. I have women in their 20s and 30s, saying, what's your best advice to me? How can I create my what's next, or what do I have to look forward to when I get to be 50 or 60? And I've had an enormous number of women in their 50s, even sometimes the late 40s, come to me and say, wow, my nest is now empty, or I've just gotten a divorce, or we've just moved across country, or whatever it is that has just put them in this huge crossroads. And I don't know where to turn. I don't know where to start. And I thought to myself, if these women are coming to me because they knew about me because they'd seen my book ad and they'd seen me on television a few times. If they're coming to me for this kind of advice, that's just telling me how much they need help. Mm-hmm. And maybe there's a real calling here. Maybe I can provide some help to these women, and that just started me on this whole public speaking path, which I find to be, aside from raising 6 wonderful children, the public speaking thing just seems to inspire so many women. And that I found that to be the most satisfying thing I've ever done. And I hope I can do it, forever and ever.
As I'm listening to you share your story, I'm hearing you talk about things like, if you don't know something, just go take a class.
Oh, yeah.
Go learn. So once we become aware of our, quote, deficiencies, whatever we think they are, the solution really is to engage that deficiency by filling the void with knowledge, information, getting a coach. For some people, it's just drawing that out of them. It's not as practical as a computer skill necessarily. Right. And then you also said, don't be afraid to start at the bottom. There's that saying, don't despise small beginnings, because it really is the way it works most times. And there's humility in the process. Maybe we've had a lot of things happening in the first part of our lives, and it's kind of scary, or for some people, they might feel embarrassed to start over. It might feel humiliating to be the oldest one in the room. And so how did you manage your mindset going into this and recognizing that you were going to need to start at the bottom? And what were the benefits of starting at the bottom?
Well, I certainly learned the hospitality, at least from Pebble Beach's perspective, from the ground up. And you really have to understand about your business, to know how it works, to be familiar with all the different facets of it, if you're going to be able to do a good job for them, and to work as a team with all of the other parts of that company. So I knew I had an awful lot to learn. And I thought, I'm starting at the bottom, but you know what? I'm darn lucky to be here. I'm so lucky to have this opportunity. And, when I walked in there, the kids were just the young golf pros and college-age kids. They were so helpful, and I was so appreciative of the way they were willing to jump in and help me or show me or whatever, that I never encountered ageism. And I think I know ageism really exists, but I think just because I was very comfortable and appreciative of starting at the bottom, and just went in there as a team player. And I want you to help me, and I want to help you, and we all worked together, and it worked out great. And as you well know now, I got this great advancement to managing all our public relations and media.
You want to do something, right?
Yeah.
What's the rush? If you're starting something new in your life and creating something that's next, I think part of that is embracing the process and the time frames that it takes to do something new. Like you said with your book, sometimes it goes at some freakishly quick rate, but I would say that most of the other things that you did took time.
Sure they do.
Yeah. And I also heard you say that you need to ask for what you want. Now, I would like to have a little discussion about the difficulty that a lot of women have of speaking up for themselves and for what they want. And I don't mean that in a critical way. It seems to be a cultural tendency for women to hush themselves, to kind of squish or suppress what they want. So Valerie, I know that people feel like this is all fine and wonderful for you. You've had really amazing experiences. You worked at Pebble Beach in your dream job. You became a model. You've even traveled as a model. You've been on television. That may feel very much out of reach for a lot of people, and they may not even want to have that experience. So what I'd love to have you share with us are, what are some of the mindset tips some of the steps that people can take to move toward whatever their dream is, and how do they identify what they want to do, what they're drawn to do. So why don't you share some of those tips with us?
Right. Okay. I'm happy to do that. When we first moved out to California, as I said, I knew I wanted to work, but I had no clue what it was going to be. And as I considered various options outside of working for Pebble Beach, I didn't even know what I wanted to do there. But as I thought about it, if I got butterflies of excitement in my tummy, that was my signal. Okay, this is something that's, maybe you might want to consider pursuing. In other words, follow your gut instincts. Your instincts will tell you everything. If you get bad vibes about something, run away from it. Don't do it. So that was a big thing. I thought, working for Pebble Beach, yeah, well, whatever it is, that's a good start, and I will figure it out. As far as asking for what you want, that was how I got my first job, even in the pro shop, was by going to the human resources department and saying, I want to work here. Hire me wherever you think that I can fit in and be beneficial to you. So ask for what you want. Later on, when I was just an administrative assistant and I knew I wanted the PR job and I went to the senior vice president, I asked him for that job. And he was a little surprised, but he gave it to me. And there's another story that I won't go into here, but at one point I wanted to bring Oprah to Pebble Beach to play the 18th hole with Clint Eastwood for her show. I called up her offices in Chicago and I asked for her to do that. And it took some doing, but we pulled it off. So yeah, it's scary to ask for what you want, but just do it. And the more you get accustomed to verbalizing your desires, the easier it will become. I'd like to share this one favorite quote of mine that Eleanor Roosevelt said, because it's so true. She said, "You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You must do the thing which you think you cannot do." That I found just to be so, so true. So when you figure out what you think you want to do, as I did with Pebble, okay, you have to be sure that you've got the skills to be able to do that job well. I knew I was going to have to not only learn as much as I could about the way the resorts operated in the different departments and so forth, but I was also going to have to learn how to use a computer. And so, that was one big skill that I took up. So you have to know what you're doing if you're going to get your job. Another thing, if you're trying to figure out what you want and you don't know, look backwards to move forwards. And by that, I mean, look back over your life and look at the things that you have enjoyed or things that you used to think you might like to do when you grew up. Revisit some of those things and you'll get some hints, you'll get some ideas. So, it is a process. And also, oh boy, is this true. Life's opportunities really do expand in proportion to our courage to seek them out. So, the more open you are, and there are opportunities and, sort of things all around us. If we just open our eyes and our ears and our intuition, they are out there, and we just have to learn how to recognize them and go for them. So, when that opportunity comes along, grab it, grab it and run through the door and go with it.
Would you say that if the opportunity comes and you're not sure, but your gut isn't necessarily saying absolutely not, maybe sometimes dancing with that opportunity and giving it some space if you're not sure, so you because we don't always know when an opportunity comes. Sometimes opportunities come and we weren't even looking in that direction,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Like you're modeling. You weren't even, that wasn't even on your mental plate,
No.
but I love that you went ahead and said, okay, this isn't my priority, but I'm willing to give this some space in my life. And I think I just did a podcast on courage and thinking about fear and how fear is actually a resource for us, right? But it doesn't mean stop, and it doesn't necessarily mean run. It can actually mean to pause. And when you're present with fear, what is that fear from? Are you in danger, or is it just scary because you don't know? And if it's just scary because you don't know, then like you said, the solution is to find out, not to stop, but just to proceed with caution instead of thinking that fear means you absolutely need to not do it. Because sometimes fear is, like you said, that's our tummy. That's our intuition saying, oh, this is exciting. It's different. And yeah, it's going to stretch us, but how else do we grow if we don't try new things?
Yes. Yeah.
You had said some things about the relationships that you had. For example, you talked about that gentleman from the Today Show.
Oh, yes.
There is such a thing as relationship capital, and recognizing that every person you meet is a potential connection for you to your own growth. You just never know. Not like you're looking at people like a slot machine, but the reality is when you meet people, they may be a connection that you don't even foresee at the moment. You didn't really know that helping this nice young family and enjoying their company was going to lead to television for you.
No way at all.
But you used the relationship capital when the time was appropriate, and you promoted yourself. How hard is it for us as women not just to ask for what we want, but to actually promote ourselves and reach out and say, I've done this thing and I think we could work together, right?
I think you have to have something to back up your request. You have to show them that you are that you are worthy of their attention and their consideration. You have to have some credibility. And then after that, you don't want to be pushy at all. You want to be, I don't want to say ladylike, but you just really want to be.
Is it mindful of how you approach it?
Yeah, you want
have a graciousness, maybe.
You want to be gracious and confident for sure, and show a level of maturity and understanding. All of those things come together. But I think that absolutely, I really believe when I look back at my relationships and all the people that I've met along the way, I think, wow, I had no idea at the time that the impact that person was going to have on my life has had, but it's happened over and over and over again. And I love it. I really think that people are put into our lives for a reason. And if we look for that reason and nurture it and go with it, beautiful, wonderful things can happen. I have so many friends that started because of just somebody that I met on a photo shoot at Pebble Beach, or somebody that I sat next to on an airplane or something. Never had any idea, but boom, there it was. I think if you're open to new relationships and experiences, and oh boy, as we've been saying, they really do come along at the most amazing times when we least expect them. Just a funny example, not funny, but funny, weird. I happen to have a certain kind of cancer in my ankle, and I had to go up to New York City to have surgery on it. Because it was so rare. And I was confined to bed for about 8 days, couldn't get up for anything. And while I'm sitting there, I got an email from somebody, our accountant actually, who knew somebody who said, oh, you would be so perfect on our speakers bureau. One thing led to another, and I ended up on this fabulous speakers bureau, and I travel all over the country because of that, I've had things
like you were laying on your back, right?
There I was, and I've had things like that happen so many times. it's just a question of keeping your eyes and ears open for opportunities. And when the right ones come along, go for it.
Now, again, I want to revisit. How do we know that it's the quote right one? What is it that you do when an opportunity comes your way? Do you have a series of questions or a thought process that you do to just kind of, shake it down a little and see if it's something you really want to do?
Well, the first thing I would do would be to really look into it in depth, because there's going to be a lot of pros and cons, and you have to find out as much as you can about the opportunity and what would be required of you. And then you figure out, okay, is that something that I have in my skill set or that I can learn to do? Once I found myself in that position, how would I feel about it? Would I feel comfortable and good and excited and happy and want to grow with it? Or would I maybe feel stressed and pinned down and not enjoy it? Mm-hmm. So I think, the farther along we can move in that process of figuring it out ahead of time, the better off we are. You don't want to spend a lot of time devoting a lot of time to learning something that you aren't going to be happy doing. And you don't want to start a job and then realize after a few months, boy, I really hate this. Why am I doing this? You don't want to, and then quit. You don't want to be in that position either. So, I know a lot of young people, they take on internships. And I think that's a great way for young people to experience different kinds of job opportunities in companies and to see what's out there and to spend enough time with a company that they can really get a sense of what they do and what the opportunities might be.
That's a great tip, because I think we could probably even benefit from internships at our season in life. Mm-hmm. There's an entire opportunity out there we probably aren't tapping into, right? There's probably things we haven't thought of. And back to that relationship capital, if you know someone that does something you think you might be interested in, then you could tap into that capital just to ask questions, just to kind of acquaint yourself with opportunities.
Oh, sure. Yes.
I know, Valerie, that you had sent me some great information and you had some powerful steps. I would love to have you share that with our tribe.
I'd be happy to. The first one is that life's opportunities expand in our courage to seek them out. We talked about that. By that, I mean, think about all the different options that might be open to you. And then when you figure out a general category that's of interest to you, start talking about it. Because you know how when you start talking about something, it becomes real.
So that put it out there. Just start talking to anybody who will listen, right?
Yeah. And also, part of that is networking, because you never know who's going to be connected to what that they can help you. And then do your homework so that you are, like I went and learned, computer, so that you're prepared to move forward, and then just do it. Take that first step. And that's the scariest and the hardest one, but just go for it. Take that first step. So that's one. Ask for what you want. Don't be afraid to ask for what you want. Don't let that whole old-fashioned feminine thing, become a bugaboo for you. Just say, heck no. What's the worst that can happen? They turn you down. So ask for what you want. Next is recognize an opportunity. And opportunities do come along all the time. Keep your eyes and ears open, your intuition. And when a good opportunity comes along for you, go for it. One time I was running through the Atlanta airport, and I got an email from a PR agency in Connecticut saying that there was this big retail company that wanted to have me come and be a spokesperson for them. Their market was women 50 and over. And wow, okay, well, yeah, that sounds like a great opportunity. I texted her back and I said, tell them I'll do it. Going through the airport, you just don't know. And then think outside the box. Don't be afraid to try something new. Don't be afraid to go out on a limb, something that may be a new experience for you. But give it a try. You may be surprised at what a nice fit it turns out to be. Number 6, and this is a big thing, you've got to build up your self-confidence if you're lacking in it. And I think certainly a lot of women who are at a crossroads where they are really unsure of themselves. So build up your self-confidence as much as you can. And then also a part of that too is just visualize a positive outcome for whatever it is that you want to do. Before you go into it, like athletes do when they're about to go into a Super Bowl game or something, visualize a positive outcome. When I was working at Pebble Beach, my book Gracefully had just come out, and I was starting to be known as a speaker for the American Heart Association. One day, they knew I was available, but I hadn't done any major big public speeches yet. My phone rang, and it was the Medtronics Corporation, who makes different kinds of implants for bodies, and the National Medical Association. And they were calling to say that they were putting on a sudden cardiac arrest leadership conference in Washington. And they had hundreds of cardiologists coming from all over the country. Would I come and speak to them about my experience as a layperson with going through this and getting the implanted cardio defibrillator? And my initial reaction to myself was, oh dear God, I've never talked to hundreds of people before, much less, a whole group of doctors. It just sounded like the most terrifying thing in the world to me. But I thought, well, I could do them a lot of good. This is something they want to hear from a layperson. I think it's important for them to know how a layperson feels going through something like this. And I could do something for myself too. I was scared to death of real public speaking. But boy, I thought, by golly, if I do this, I'll get over that fear in a hurry. So my husband and I got on a plane for Washington, and we went, and I did that. And it turned out to be one of the greatest things I'd ever done. And it opened up all kinds of speaking opportunities, not just for the Heart Association, but most recently, and I'll mention this because I imagine much of your audience is in California, although I don't know, I was invited to come and be a presenter on 2 different subjects at the Central California Women's Conference in Fresno last September, which has 4,000 women that came to it. And I spoke to them about creating what's next, and then also about fit, young, and vital, being your best at any age. How do you do that? So, that was a long way from where I first started out. But the more you do these things, the more confident you get. And it's just really a matter of visualizing, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be great at it. And then, as we've been saying, opportunities really do come when we least expect them. So be aware of your surroundings, be aware of people that you're meeting, and just be prepared to go for it. And then finally, if you're going to be able to do all of this, you've got to be a strong, healthy person. And that's when I tell people, love yourself enough to take really good care of yourself. And in both my books, Gracefully and in Creating What's Next, that Heather Hummel also co-wrote with me, I talk about how to get a good night's sleep. And I have wonderful resources, major people all over the country that I go to for their advice and experience. I talk about getting a good night's sleep, about nutrition. I have a great nutritionist in LA that I've been working with for years. I talk about fitness. I even address sexuality, because that's a great big issue for middle-aged people. It's huge. And when I bring that up in a talk, boy, you could hear a pin drop. I had a really cute experience, and I'll just quickly tell you about. I was speaking at a very upscale retirement home out in Austin, Texas, last year. And I always do a Q&A at the end of my talks. I love to hear people's questions, and I love, answering whatever they are. So everybody in the room, they all had questions. And then somebody from marketing stood up and she said, she said, I've got somebody who would prefer to remain anonymous, but I'd like to pose this question to you. How do you feel about people having sex after 80? And so I said, I think it's phenomenal. And we talked about sexuality and touching and closeness and all of that. So afterwards, there was a little party for everybody, and she came and she sat down next to me, and she said, I bet you'd love to know who asked that last question about sexuality. And I said, yeah, I really would. It was an 80-year-old retired minister. This little old man in the back of the room. Oh, God bless him. That's wonderful.
Well, and there are so many things that we are navigating in this season of life. And I think that's where the message that's underlying all of this is to kind of cast off the shackles of doubt and fear and worry and what ifs and move toward why nots.
Yes. Yes, I love that. I love that.
What is the worst thing that can happen? Because this is how I look at it. I already know what's going to happen if I don't do anything.
Sure.
Right?
Exactly.
So we might as well just go for it because it's probably not going to kill us. It's not like we're jumping out of airplanes without parachutes. We're just trying something new. And the vivacity that comes from engaging life on that level, staying curious and staying open and being present with people and conversations and opportunities instead of judging them. Kind of, again, the fear is not the red light, it's the yellow light, Be present. Be present with the fear. And it makes a huge difference, I think, when we are navigating something new. And I talk about this all the time. We have preconceived belief systems that will come into play, and they feed the fear sometimes, especially if we lack confidence. So do you have any advice to someone? You said, you need to build your self-confidence. Do you have any tips on what it looks like to build self-confidence?
Yes.
Awesome. Because, it's kind of one of those things like, you just go, you can lose weight. It's not hard. Or, people put things in such like, just do this. But how do we just do this? There's more than just doing it, right? As you're building your self-confidence, what does that look like? As I'm thinking about the self-confidence, it really is the sister of fear. Like building your confidence and facing your fears are in the same boat with each other. So the question that came to mind was, does the fear diminish, or do you just get better at handling it as you're building your self-confidence? Like somebody might think, I'll build my confidence and never fear again. But my life experience doesn't really necessarily show that fear goes away. Sometimes it diminishes quite, once you gain confidence in something, sometimes it really does just go away. But every time you go to the next level, you're building, right?
Yeah. The more you learn about whatever it is that you're fearful of, the more self-confidence you're going to have, and the less it's going to spook you out. So what you do to start out when you're really lacking self-confidence, in other words, you have to fake it until you make it, as they say. So you want to start out by creating a good first impression. One way that you do that is you just have to feel good about yourself, about your body, about your faults and everything else, because nobody is perfect. And I think it's true that, when we meet somebody, it's not their perfect body that we're looking for, or that they're looking for in us, or, the perfect face or whatever. It's really their energy, their spike, their vitality. It's their personality and their energy. Yeah. Those are the big things.
On that point, I used to tell my children when they were growing up that, we always worry about what other people think.
Yes.
And I said, but what are you thinking about right now? You're thinking about yourself, right? What do people think of me? And so I think we go back to that kind of, mindset of people are going to judge me, or they're going to think, what does she think she's doing? Who does she think she is? But the reality is, if that thought runs across their mind, it's literally going to run across their mind. Most people aren't thinking about us. So
Right.
worrying about what people think doesn't matter, because they're not even thinking about us. We're all busy thinking about what other people think of us. So you don't even have to think about it.
That's such a good point. When you feel good about yourself, your overall whole self-image starts to change and transform, and you take on this glow, and people are just automatically drawn to you because of this healthy energy that you project. So just, as I said, fake it until you make it. And the more positive the energy you project, the more others see you as a positive, healthy person. And then the more you actually become that person. Also say it with body language. And we've all read articles about, when you're walking, don't hunch over, and put your head down. Put your head up, your shoulders back. Have a pleasant expression on your face. Maybe not a grin ear to ear, unless there's a reason for it, because people might think you're a little weird. But, just present yourself as a strong, confident person. Also, make other people feel good, because if you do that, people are not going to remember what you said or how you looked. They're going to remember how you made them feel. So then absolutely looking the part. Clothes are a big difference in making you feel confident. Take advantage of a local tailor. Usually dry cleaning shops have good tailors there. And if something needs to be altered a little bit, get it done so that your clothes absolutely fit right. Be well groomed, invest in a good haircut, hair color, whatever it is, that you need to look your best, because when you look your best, you're going to project and feel your best. Take good care of your skin. You have a big makeup background.
Yes.
So you know the importance of that.
Yes.
If we let our energy and our inner light shine through, and if we are genuinely more interested in others and care more about them than we do ourselves, that's what people will relate to. Okay?
Being in service to people instead of taking something from them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Confidence without arrogance is sexy. That's a good thing. And then keep your sense of humor. Everybody is attracted to somebody with a sense of humor. Keep it going. So that's what I, have learned about projecting self-confidence. It seems to work. As I said, to fake it until you make it if you have to.
Well, and to be honest, there's a certain compassion that we can walk in, understanding that this is a common experience we people have. Yes. So there's a good chance that the people we are around are walking through the same journey. So showing up authentically in a situation and allowing ourselves to be who we are, not put on a facade or a mask or creating what we think people want to see. I really feel like creating what's next, one of the key qualities that's so necessary, making it last and making it worthwhile, is authenticity. Showing up as who we really are, no longer being defined by the roles that we play, the things that we've done, but actually really standing firm and understanding who we are. Because it's easy as a woman. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a whatever. And it's like, but who are you? Compassionate, loving, funny, smart. Like, what is it that makes up who you are? All of those roles and experiences, what they do is they inform how you show up in the world. They inform the way that you do what you do, but it's not who you are. And I think navigating this second half of life and creating something that's new is we almost have to break from those roles. And that's uncomfortable, because we've so identified with those roles.
That's true.
So we have to shed the roles and be open to something that looks and feels different. So I think being comfortable with the uncomfortable is one of the most important things, because we tend to get more comfortable as life goes on, and we're actually calling people out of comfort and saying, come on, try something new. Shake it up a little bit. But I do want to ask you as we wrap up today, if you could give my tribe just a couple of thoughts that you really want to make sure that they really grab, if you could pour into them things that you, from your heart to theirs, you believe would have impact, what would those 2 or 3 things be?
Well, I would tell them to believe in themselves, to not be afraid, to not hesitate to go for what they really, in their heart and their soul, they believe is the right next step for them. And to keep evolving and growing in their lives, because if they can do that, they are going to be so much happier and more productive as they get older, so much more interesting to themselves and their friends and their families. And they're just going to have a much happier, more fulfilled life. So that's one big thing. I have a nice quote that I often share with my audiences, and I'm excited to share with you too, Gina. It says, 50 is still 50, but we've totally revamped 50. It's no longer the end of the road. 50 is healthy, strong, confident, sexy, vibrant, involved, curious, active, and seeking new dimensions to life. In short, it's better than ever.
Yes, absolutely. I want to thank you, Valerie, for coming on and sharing your life story and your life wisdom with my tribe. You are the woman I've been searching for, to not just in theory talk about it, but to have actually practically lived it out and to be able to share that it is possible from the side of having actually done it. And so I'm so grateful for your time today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Truly, it's been an honor and a pleasure, Gina.
I know my tribe is going to love you. And with that in mind, tribe, for those of you who are interested in Valerie's books, you can head to Amazon and you can find Creating What's Next Gracefully and Gracefully Looking and Being Your Best at Any Age. I will also put them in the show notes at www.feminineroadmap.com, episode 070. And there you will also find the details on how to connect with Valerie directly. And if you have not yet subscribed to Feminine Roadmap Podcast, I want to invite you to head on over to iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and now we are on Stitcher. And please rate and leave a comment and share with your sisters. It's so important that we grab a cup of something wonderful and a girlfriend and have these valuable, life-giving conversations. We are a tribe that are 1 million or more strong, and I want to thank you all for being in this journey with me, for sharing your time each week and listening to this podcast. And I trust that you've been encouraged and uplifted by our lovely guest, Valerie, today. And I look forward to sharing more and more journeys with you in the future. I look forward to talking to you all next week. Have a great one. Bye-bye.